Well, I had to squeeze the information out of Lord Monckton. He's too gentlemanly to really tell you what happened to him, but he's cut up and really got thrashed to the ground bad. And he is filing a complaint through someone he knows in the Danish Parliament. And we need to not forgive police when they assault us from behind, because if this is allowed to continue, next they'll be snatching and grabbing us like what happened at the G20 a few months ago, where uniformed military were snatching and grabbing peaceful protesters off the streets. Lord Monckton, I know you don't want to spend too much more time on this, but finishing up, any other comments about how you were assaulted and how the UN... I mean, I've seen countless videos of accredited reporters. If they ask about ClimateGate, armed UN police drag them away. The climate cultist on the streets. If anyone, I mean, video after video, we have multiple videos posted on Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com today, where people are being interviewed and they say, well, I question man-made climate change. I think ClimateGate's important. Bottles and rocks and apples begin hitting them in the face and hissing, attacking. I mean, these are authoritarian thugs, not just the police, not just the UN. I mean, the acolytes of this, when you talk about Nuremberg electric atmosphere, and we have Schwarzenegger telling Rolling Stones he dreams of being a dictator like Hitler at Nuremberg. He now is emerging as the leader, openly saying in French news agency, in the Telegraph and others, that he's going to lead a movement to bypass the U.S. government, the federal government, at the state and city level to implement this global governance grid. He says global governance and planetary transformation. Is this not sedition by Schwarzenegger, saying he will come into our nation as a usurper and bypass the Senate?
Well, I think we're covering quite a lot of ground there, starting off with, I think what we must put into perspective is a relatively small incident. I mean, okay, yes, I'm a peer of the realm, but no, policemen shouldn't be going around bashing people in the back. But I think the poor guy hadn't realised that he sort of overdid it a bit. He hadn't intended to knock me to the ground. It was just unfortunate that I was in a particular position where, when he hit me, I tripped over and fell flat on my face. I don't think he meant it. I do think he should have, having been warned not to put his hands on me, he shouldn't have done that. And I think in due course he will be disciplined and probably put down a rank for a year or two to remind him that you don't treat people that way. And so let's not over-magnify that. And I do feel a lot of sympathy for the Danish police in that they are clearly being under orders from these very, very nasty, flinty-faced goons of the UN security force, who are hated by absolutely everybody who's come into contact with them. They are very spooky people indeed. And it is quite unfortunate that the UN, when it runs these conferences, doesn't allow the local police to run the show. It sends its own dreadful people in, and they are really hated and feared now. And those are the ones I ultimately hold responsible for the events we've seen. You know, the Danish police laying in not just to our side, to be fair, but also to demonstrators from the other side with truncheons. I mean, they've been bashing them. And that's also been shown on television worldwide. And it has led me and others to comment that perhaps the Danes and the UN don't quite understand what being in a democracy is all about. So moving on from that, then to Schwarzenegger and him saying that this is such a pressing problem that he's going to circumvent the government, I don't think he'll get away with that. He too could find himself impeached if he tries to go against the U.S. Constitution. The Constitution is there, and we now see what an important document it is, regarded by Obama and his people, and they said this during the election campaign, as a piece of paper that is now an obstacle to what the left wishes to achieve internationally. And Schwarzenegger, although he's nominally a Republican, is clearly more and more identifying himself with the, effectively, and I'm going to use the word, the communist left that are now running America and much else in the world. And I think what we have to do is to say that if anybody breaks the law in the way that Schwarzenegger is proposing to do, then however high and senior they may be in their local area, they will be taken to task and taken, if necessary, to court for that. So I don't think that he's going to get away with that. I think that's mere rodomontade of the sort that you get at these conferences. They overstate everything to the nth degree, much as the UN has been doing all along about the climate. And so we shouldn't get too excited excited by that. If he tries to do anything of that kind, he will get stopped eventually. Because
well, yes, sir. But I mean, Lord Monckton, here's a quick example. He couldn't get the legislature of California to pass taxes on all televisions and ban them above 40 inches, saying he's the Gruppenführer, the Group Führer. He's going to decide as the Gauleiter what type of TV you can have. So he just ordered the California Department of Energy to do it by fiat. Now he is calling for a summit of mayors, and the UN had a summit of mayors there, to have the cities levy the taxes. A bunch of other U.S. cities are doing this. I know some of the governments in England, in the United States, and it's the same all over the Western world, for those that don't know, you have the federal government, you have the state governments, and cities and counties and local municipalities are chartered through the state constitution. So this is a form of rebellion to have Schwarzenegger saying, we're going to go to cities to have them begin the looting and the rendering of booty to the international organizations. We have the UN, just as they've gone into the universities and taken them over, actively trying to take over our communities, and we need to rout them out. That's my only point.
Right, and you're quite right. And the way to do that is to make sure that any state or local organization that oversteps its powers is taken to court under the ultra vires rule. That means anything that is beyond your powers, ultra vires in Latin, that's the court phrase for it, you aren't allowed to do that. And it is not permissible for local administration to levy federal taxes. So if they try to start playing that game, all it takes is one good citizen to take them to court, to the federal court, and say, look, this is not allowed, is it? The federal court will look at it and say, no, it isn't. And they will impose whatever penalties are necessary, whatever orders of the court are necessary, to stop the local administration doing this. So you do still have a constitution in the United States that basically works. And if anyone, like the EPA or local government or state government, try to overtop the rights of the U.S. legislature to make and unmake the laws that you elected them to make and unmake, then you will be defending your democracy if you take them to court and say, we will not have this imposed upon us. We are doing this in the UK all the time, because we recently had our local government trying to impose some damn fool tax on us. And they said they had the right to do this under some European directive or another. And we said, no, you don't have the right to do that to us, and we are not paying. And if you try to make us pay, we will take you to court. And they were so frightened that they said, okay, we'll leave you alone and we won't.
So clearly, when you stand up and fight to this illegal strategy, they fold. But the question is, will we stand and fight? Now, I want to get into strategy. In layman's terms, you're probably the leading expert in the world, not just on the science from studying it and interviewing all the scientists, but on how their fraud works, how their organization works, how their propaganda works, how their bureaucracy, their takeover by stealth works. Specifically, Lord Christopher Monckton, joining us live in the final days, the climax of the summit tomorrow into next week. Specifically, you're saying that they are going to get an agreement. It's going to be a stealth agreement. Explain that to us and what you expect to happen tomorrow with Obama and what we can do understanding their cloaked attack profile.
Right. The first thing they will do, and the one thing that I think they were always going to succeed in doing at this conference, is to agree to establish what will be delicately called the institutional framework. Now, that is a code word for world government. They're no longer calling it world government because they tried that, I spotted it, I publicized it, the world went, we're not having that. And so they're beaten off from using the word, but they're going to keep the structure. They're going to use this conference, the agreement that they will reach here, to set up the institutional framework, which means, in effect, the world government, and they're going to take from the Western countries the very large financial resources required to do that. That's the one thing they are definitely going to succeed in doing here, and they will announce that as a victory in itself, and they will be right, because that is the one and only single aim of this entire global warming nonsense. It is to establish the mechanisms, the structure and, above all, the funding for a world government. And that is what they're going to get agreement for. And they will disguise it by saying we're setting up a $10 billion fund or a $100 billion fund for adaptation to climate change in third world countries. But actually, this money will almost all be gobbled up by the international bureaucracy. And because of the way that governments now hide from their people how it is they're spending the people's money and exactly how much is going to international organizations. When I had a question put down in the House of Lords about how much Britain had given to the UN's climate panel over the years, the answer I got was, we do not have this information. Well, of course they have the information, but they're not going to tell us. And the difficulty will be in finding out what they are actually doing